vote for God-fearing people. Vote for God-fearing people. Don't, as if to say, don't vote for God-loving people. So I'm trying to make you understand that, when you're talking about democracy, you must talk about the power and the capacity of the people to be strong enough, to be defiant enough to be able to protect freedom. And
I run a busy team, and Monday.com has transformed the way we work together. We started off using Monday.com to track and manage our projects.
Freedom and justice. People who cannot protect freedom and justice cannot protect democracy. People who cannot protect freedom and justice, they do not, and you do not empower them to be able to defy you when you are wrong, cannot correct you. And with the passage of time, you become a tyrant, you become a dictator, etc., etc., etc. I'm sorry, a simple question, I've gone too long, but...
In the next video, he was asked to give an example why he said that the European and American polities are losing morality.
The station that rules the nation, from state to state, country to country. We play the hits just for you.
This has been going on for some time. Through various things. I mean, we've seen it over the passage of history. But the last, prominent features on our minds on TV globally was the apartheid regime, how long it took to dismantle it. The other one that the world was hoping that we would be dismantled so that we can have some peace was also the problem between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We didn't see it. We saw apartheid dismantled, but not the Palestinian-Israeli issue. Let me cut a long story short. The point is that the world, us children, were throwing stones against helicopter using missiles, etc. It was hurting the world. The world went on demonstration by the superpowers. President Bush, Tony Blair would not listen. What was happening? The world was beginning to feel, I think, partially guilty, but at the same time, when nothing was being done about it, the world was becoming immune. When something is going wrong and you don't stop it, there's a way in which your whole mentality becomes immune to it, and with the passage of time, you don't see anything wrong with it anymore. To the point where even Israeli pilots, fighter pilots, and their general refused to obey orders to pump missiles into little children or whatever it is throwing stones. The point I'm trying to make, in addition to that, something very dramatic happened before September 11th, the Jenin massacre. It was BBC that mentioned the Jenin massacre. The Secretary General tried to put a team together to go and investigate the BBC claim about the Jenin massacre. Lo and behold, when they arrived, the Israeli authorities said, no, you cannot inspect it. This was a real shock to the world. If you're innocent of a Jenin massacre, why do you prevent them from coming to inspect it? If you prevent them from inspecting it, you will give the world the impression that there is a Jenin massacre. I don't know what happened after that, but for us in the world, it was a real shock. Let's put that aside. Not too long after that, it almost seemed like the last straw. It's probably just sheer coincidence. September 11th happened, okay? Let's put that aside. It was a painful thing. Nobody liked it. Nobody wants it, etc. But the interesting thing is that America took up the fight against terrorism, which is good. But what America Britain and some of you living here do not know is that we in Africa have been living under regimes of terrorism for decades. My brother, when you're talking about immorality, when they were looking for a solution to deal with terrorism, I believe Saddam Hussein, Afghanistan, etc. were some of their targets. They moved in there, ready to pounce on them. Quite frankly, I think if they had held...
If you manage a team, you have to try Monday.com. Monday.com is a platform to track everything your team.
held Iraq under siege for 1 month, 1.5, 2 months, the regime would have collapsed and they would have had it their way. The world was going on demonstration, but I think America and Tony Blair's government refused to give it time. In other words, you could have done it without unnecessary violence. The point I'm trying to make is that I think the whole agenda was to demonstrate the new global order to the world. So instead of waiting and pushing them out, they had to move in with force to demonstrate that this is the new force, this is the new global order of the world. By virtue of that action, Mr. Interviewer, by virtue of that action, you better listen to me carefully. They were demonstrating to the world that the right of might supersedes the might of right. The right of might, yes. The right of might supersedes the right of might. By virtue of that, you were undermining the morality of right. Let me take you back. In fact, let me take you back. Prior to that, intervention, far back as
The
when
station
President
that
Bush,
rules the
President Bush
nation,
was in power.
state to state.
Aquaba Radio.
At that time, Vice President Dick Cheney was the Deputy Minister for Defense. No, the Minister for Defense. He looked at the world on CNN and said that America's interest supersedes moral values, morality. I was shocked. I don't know how many people will not be shocked by that statement. We will make our enemies fear us, and we will make our allies and our friends respect us. But to say that America's interest supersedes morality, I think is the most painful thing you can say. I mean, I want to look for stronger words, but the point I'm trying to make is that by virtue of making that statement, you were undermining human morality, because civilization has evolved on morality. Civilization has evolved on morality. And for a superpower to be so arrogant, if I may use that word, pardon me, but the point is, that's the reality, to say that the interest of my power supersedes morality. American citizens believe in morality. It's extremely important. Every nation, people everywhere believe in the value of morality. People are elected into office because of the value of morality. Okay?
In this part 3, he was asked what he thought about the exported democracy by the superpowers.
Cosa ne pensa della democrazia esportata dalle grandi potenze?
It's a very complex situation for us, really. But let me see if I can just simplify it as I possibly can. We've always believed in, and we know the value of democracy. Long before, we were colonized, and even after we were colonized. However, the world is going through changes, etc. we've been through the pain of colonialism, and today we're going through colonialism, neo-colonialism, in the sense that what I'm trying to say is that there was a time when we saw the white man, our colonial powers, as our enemies. But I think, no, not that I think, something that is worse than an enemy is a traitor. Yes. And when we won our freedom, some of our countries were led by some of the most noble nationalists, of our time. But at the same time, with the passage of time, some of them became treacherous and rather betrayed our aspirations. In effect, what I'm trying to say is that as bad as an enemy can be, I think something worse than an enemy is a traitor. We've ended up evolving in the process of trying to modernize. We've ended up being westernized to the point where, as I sit here before you, when I wanted to even name my children African names, heroic names, I'm a Catholic. The Catholic Church, or that character, back at home, said, no, I cannot. There'll have to be Catholic names. I mean, those Catholic names are European names. I went through an argument with this priest, and I said, listen, I have a right to my identity. Don't take away my identity. Okay? I mean, Christianize me if you may, but don't westernize me. There were times, my wife and I is a great graphic artist. We made some beautiful Christmas cards that depicted Christmas in an African setting. And the Christmas cards sold so well, even with Catholic nuns, white Catholic nuns. We wanted to secure the patent. I went to an office, the Registrar General's office, to secure the patent. Can you believe that this fellow African, Registrar General, looking at my black personality, black face, told me that, no, I cannot. This was long after independence, and that it's going to take about 3 years. I said, why 3 years? He said, it'll have to go to England. It'll go to England, and it might take about 3 years before I'm granted the right to that patent or whatever it is that register. In other words, in effect, what I'm trying to say is that, so I have no right to even my creativity. I create my own, you take it away from me, and you have to send it to the colonial power. 3 years later, when they have reproduced it, and I have no more right to it. So as an African, when you're talking about democracy, etc., let's put it aside. Let me bring you to the current modern situation since the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. And we have this unipolar world. The mistakes they're making, by virtue of how they are approaching, especially, let's say, the Iraq and the Afghanistan situation, it is undermining international political morality. And what it's doing is that it's percolating downwards. So as it percolates downwards, every mistake you make downwards, by the time it gets to my country, the mistake is multiplied by 5 times. People in my part of the world are beginning to mimic and take the cue from the new global leaders. What does that mean? Let me give you one fine example. In America, you have Republicans, you have the Democrats. You have industries that are strong and independent enough to be able to vote or finance whoever they wish. So there's a certain element of independence. But you come to my country, when you're talking about export, the new situation over the last few years is that those who are in power today, in a setting, taking the cue from the new global power, Bush's America, the unipolar world, they are destroying every opposition. Any business they think is associated with with the opposition has to be destroyed. Containing some of, typically of my country, what is happening? National armed forces are being denationalized, and they're trying to tribalize the army. My dear friend, do you know what you're doing? You are sowing the seed of instability. And yet, in spite of this, Ghana made a beautiful example in my time, and I'm not taking credit for it. Our people did it. All I did was to give our people a leadership of accountability, a leadership of integrity, and our people performed the miracle. And you listen to me, whether you're from Alaska, I've said it again, Greenland, wherever it is, so long as you give people a leadership of integrity, they will always perform the miracle. They'll give you the best. We did a fantastic job. My time was up. We lost to the opposition. The opposition has been committing the most atrocious crimes. I'm not saying this because I'm in opposition. I would have wished they had continued from where we left off. I would have saluted them and praised them. My country would be flying. But my country is involved in the most massive corruption, some of the brutal killings that have taken place, terrorizing, recruiting people from their parties into the police, the military, etc. And yet, BBC, CNN, Sky, American, media, the print media are all quiet because they want to portray the image of that fine Ghana as a showcase for the rest of Africa, so that they can use Ghana, who has done so well from my time into this time, and they are keeping quiet about this atrocious, the image of this government, because they do not want to undermine. They have enough problem in Afghanistan, they have enough problem in whatever it is, so they do not want to lose the situation in Africa in terms of the new world order. The unfortunate thing is that I don't care who you, in Italy, in France, in Britain, America bring into power in my country. But I would wish you would contain them enough from declining into massive corruption and brutality and tyrannical tendencies. Because if you do not contain them, what happens is that they become so corrupt, they are now afraid of free and fair elections, and they refuse to leave power, and then we have volcanic eruptions.
In part 4, he was asked, how does Africa pay for the errors of the superpowers?
Secondo lei l'Africa paga un caro prezzo sugli errori delle grandi potenze?
We end up with injustice, we end up with corruption, we end up with poverty, we end up with the worst possible things, we end up with the image. I don't have to tell you the image that you have in Africa. I don't have to tell you. Listen, when I was in office as an Air Force pilot, I went to school and trained in the cities. When I became an Air Force pilot, I had the opportunity to travel around the country. That's when I saw there is a big difference between those of us living in the cities and the mass people who feed us living in the rural areas. My brother, you listen to me carefully. The water they drink in those rural areas is such that the water you use to flush your toilet, the water we use to flush our toilet in the cities is much cleaner than the water they drink in the villages. No clinics, no hospitals, etc. No headache, no needles to even sew their clothes. That's when I began to see the parasitic relationship between our cities and this thing. I mean, I've seen too much injustice in my country when I decided enough was enough. When some of us began to decide that something has to be done about it. When we emerged into political office, you know something? Electricity used to be limited to only 27% of the country. In the shortest possible time, we were able to, with Italian assistance, we were able to extend electricity from 27 to almost 87% of the rest of the country. We were able to extend roads. The infrastructure was improved every part of the country. I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, the energy now goes to every part of the village. Children can now go to school and can learn at night, so that my children living in the city will not have an advantage over that child in the village. My child has no superior, was not born with anything superior than that child in the village. But so long as that child in the village is denied and deprived of electricity to learn at night and good water, etc., my child in the city will always have the advantage over the ones in the rural areas. I've been to school where rural students were doing better with the passage of time than those of us in the cities. Please, I know the potential of humanity. So when you're talking about the effects of some of these things, sometimes, you know, these superpowers must learn to accommodate and to live and to accept patriotic leadership, patriotic citizens. Too often, they're happier with people who are not patriots. But you in Europe, excuse me, don't get angry, you never seem to know the role that some of your bad businessmen, you have good businessmen, and I respect them, but some of your bad businessmen are always doing bad things on our continent. And it's our people who suffer. This kind of thing must stop. Your governments must begin to wake up to help us, to help to police and to maintain the integrity of economic policies and economic practices in my country. Your country must help us to protect the judiciary in my country. Your country must help us to police and to monitor and to protect the political integrity in our continent.
In this part 5, he was asked about to give details of any foreign investment or bank account that he has abroad, or any bank account or foreign investment that he has been accused of having.
Parlando di moralità, Mr. Rawlings, lei dopo 20 anni di presidenza ha dei conti correnti all'estero?
As I sit here now, I am opening. My wife and I are trying to open an account, in Europe. One, because we're also setting up a foundation. But you better listen to me carefully. Until I left all my life, together with that of my wife, until I left office, schooling, officer, and until I left office in the year 2000, I never had a foreign account. Never. The CIA, the German intelligence, British MI5, your Italians, the French, all of you go and look into every bank account and to tell the world whether my wife and I ever had $1, 1 penny anywhere in any bank in any part of the world. before I left office. I never did. Interestingly, and it never occurred to me, I had no desire for it. The only time it struck me that I needed a foreign money was when my wife was ill. And it was a situation we could not deal in my country, in Ghana. And we looked for the most affordable place, which was in a university in Europe. That was the first time I suddenly realized how naked I was in terms of, I couldn't even save my wife's life, a very noble lady who had been through trying times with me. That's when I started calling around the world, friends, can you help, etc. So, having no account, oh, by the way, before I left office, we knew she was going to have this operation, so we had even put a little money aside. I think it was about $22,000 it was going to cost us. My wife is asthmatic, and over the years, it has developed its side effects, both in her intestines and other complicated places. So it was going to be quite an expensive, this thing. And you listen to me carefully. I was looking around the world, anybody help me? It's not for myself, I have no account. This is the address of the hospital. This is how much it's going to cost. It was the most shocking, painful experience I had been across, that I could hardly get any assistance early enough. My government, who knew, the new government, who had taken over from me, who knew I needed help, and that we had made preparations, refused. On the last day before we were to leave, she was supposed to be on the operation table on the 22nd of a certain month. 2 days before, that's when I got a letter from the president's office, a 3-page letter, conditions I had to fill, a whole lot of rubbish. We got a ticket, we flew to London. This president, or this man who was a president who had been in office for almost 20 years, 10 years, 18, plus whatever it is, 8 plus another 2, almost 19, 20 years. I had no dollar account anywhere, and I had to stop in London to borrow money from someone so that I could go and do my wife's operation. You listen to me carefully. About 8,000, to take care of her needs, etc., into the hotel. 22,000 it was going to cost us, either dollars or euro. I think it was dollars, into the hospital. When the operation, after a while, I had to leave and go back to Ghana and left her. Here's the shocking part of it. After the operation was done, on borrowed money, people don't believe it, but it's true. On borrowed money, when the operation was done, she was discharged into the hotel so that she could be brought in once in a while, for checkup, a review. Can you believe that when the driver of the embassy under the new government informed the ambassador that I have to take Mrs. Rawlings, for a review, the ambassador said no. In Switzerland, the Ghanaian ambassador, it happened in Switzerland, said no. The driver was so shocked, he put the embassy car key on the table, went and used his own personal car to go and drive my wife to the hospital for the review. This is the kind of vicious petty-mindedness that you can sometimes run in parts of the world in terms of my relationship with this character that, your Western powers or the Western powers have promoted, and they are trying to sanitize his image as if he's the cleanest, finest head of state in Africa. It's absolute rubbish. He's a criminal. He's a thief. He went around telling the world, wrote a letter to every bank around the world that I had stolen suitcases of money into bank accounts. I was trying to kill him, make a coup. I had stolen 19 cars, etc. All of them were false. I will not tell you something that the bank, it took 3 months for me to be able to open a bank account through somebody. Finally, When the bank manager was going to open that account for me, do you know what he told his Swiss friend? You can come and do it. Every day he goes there. Is it open? Is it open? Is it open? Finally, after 3 months, the man told my friend that he is one of the few African heads of state who does not own a foreign account. You can now come and open the account for him. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, look at the difficulty I had from my own government, from outside. But then the other side of it is that to be so mean that not even the driver could send my wife for a review. That ambassador, for being so, he was so mean, the government withdrew every protocol facility as a former head of state. I have to carry my own suitcases.
Hey everybody, stop clicking around. I am in the woods with some water going in the background near my house.
Never mind. They even tried to get Swissair not to give me protocol. And Swissair told them, hey, you don't do that. They try to campaign with other governments. Don't give this man protocol facility, etc. And yet, I'm supposed to have been the man who turned the situation round in Ghana, in West Africa. You know, so in effect, what I'm trying to say is that we've had a pretty rough time, but the more you show hatred towards your opposition, sometimes towards us, the more you get promoted in some parts of the world. It's not healthy. I mean, we must begin to stop treating oppositions and ourselves as enemies. We must begin to rather engage in constructive relationship, constructive criticism, and not attempt to destroy and to see the opposition as your enemy to be destroyed. I mean, factories that we don't have time. 2 hours, 1 hour is not enough. 30 minutes is not enough for you and I. I need 9 hours. I need 8 hours to wake you up in Italy, in Europe, to the problems we're going through in Africa. Yes.
Hello. In this part 6, it was asked about the role of the superpower media.
Cosa pensa del ruolo dei media delle grandi potenze?
It's a pity, but I think with the collapse of the Eastern Bloc, it has made it extremely difficult for us to hear both sides of the case. I am not surprised that Al Jazeera, made an effort and emerged, because the only side we could hear were the superpowers, Western powers, were BBC's, Sky to some extent, CNN, and etc. Yes. And in my country, well, I don't speak Italian, so we don't. But in Africa, very often we hear BBC, we hear, CNN, Voice of America, etc. Occasionally you get snippets of the truth.
The best music.
But the propaganda that is going on, quite frankly, is not giving us both sides of the thing. However, it comes as no surprise to me, because the media war is another form of war. I mean, there's the war of the bullet, and there is the war of the words. Disinformation and misinformation is probably more effective than whatever it is. Yes. And let me say something to you in Europe and America. You're good-natured people, good-hearted people. You're people of morality and moral values. But if the media, especially in America, for instance, could give you both sides of the story as pertains to foreign policies and foreign actions, you will bring so much pressure to bear, because you still live in a world with the capacity and the ability to be able to influence your presidents. You can impeach your presidents like in America. So you, as a people, still have power, unlike us. In Africa, they disempower. That was the difference between me and some of the others in my country. I believe in empowering people. And when you empower people, it is their will that prevails. Okay? You just provide the leadership. However, the point I want to make is that in a situation where people are disempowered, like in some parts of my continent, what happens is that I'm the little tin god. I call the shots. But you people are empowered enough, not only that, but if you're informed enough, you can make the decision. You can tell your president. You can stand up to your president. Provided you are getting the correct information, both sides of it. So in effect, what I'm trying to say is that the media, I think, must wake up to its responsibilities, and do what is just. Let me just say something. I have a little theory that the world is manipulated. I may be wrong, but the world is manipulated by the multinational corporations, the media, some parts of the media, and the intelligence apparatus. They work as a triumvirate, and they are neatly sandwiched like the ham, like your tomato, whatever it is. They are neatly sandwiched in between the governed people, the governed ordinary people, and the governors. That is where the manipulation takes place. And there is a symbiotic relationship between the triumvirate and sometimes at this level. And if we do not make every possible attempt to return morality, when we're talking about the immorality of international politics, the immorality in business ethics is also percolating downwards, and the criminal, corrupt thing that goes on in my world is bad. So the sooner we begin to return, to restore some sense of morality in business ethics, in politics, in the media, intelligence apparatus, with beliefs, conviction that this is wrong, etc. After all, if you're talking about globalization, then please, let the same value, what is good for the goose, let it be good for the gander. What you want for yourself, I think is something you should want for your fellow man. If we truly want to enjoy peace and stability under a so-called unipolar world, then we have to wake up to our responsibility. You listen to me. The late Pope John Paul contributed his quota towards the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. With the growing unipolar world, some of us were thinking, is it going to be better or is it going to be worse? The Western powers talk about democracy, Christian values, etc., etc., etc. Some of us were hoping that the world, let us hope it's going to be better. Do you know what your own Pope John Paul said before he died in a meeting with President Gorbachev? He described the new situation as the savagery of capitalism. The savagery of capitalism. This is a serious indictment. It's a serious indictment of us. We're beginning to sow the seed of instability. My brother, let us wake up.
In this part 7, he was asked why he was very, very angry with the then present Ghanaian government.
Lei è molto molto arrabbiato con l'attuale governo ghanese. Ci spiega il perché?
They have not lived up to expectation. I think after about 10 years and 8 years in office, revolution, revolt, etc. Quite frankly, a good number of us were tired and were looking forward to, a positive change. Not a positive change, a change. The people also wanted it. And I mean, even though some of our people did not trust them because they know their history, some of us gave them the benefit of the doubt of goodwill. They've turned out to be the most criminal government in the history of our country. Don't take my word for it. I would dare you, any one of you with the courage, to come home to Ghana and come and investigate things to do with the judiciary, the politics that's going on, the brutalization, some of the killings, etc. It's really terrible. And let me tell you something. Not too long ago, your own embassies, Western embassies, were getting worried. This was even before 2004. They stole the election, by the way. But let's leave that for the moment. Your own Western governments were telling them that corruption is getting dangerous. So I think they helped them through to steal the 2004 election so that they could begin to correct their mistakes. But they are getting worse. A few months, was it 2 months ago or not too long ago, the CIA boss called Porter Gross came through my country. I think he's resigned. This was about the time when some of the American generals were telling President Bush that retire some of your generals because the policies, the way they're going about the situation in Iraq is not correct. Right about that time, Porter Gross came through my country in Ghana on the quiet to warn. In other words, if you don't believe me, don't take my word for it when I say this is probably the most criminal government in our history, and yet they're sanitizing their image for a political purpose. Porter Gross came and told them it's getting so bad that a coup d'etat or something could happen. And if it happens, don't think America will come to your assistance, because the coup will be very popular, because your image is bad, too corrupt, the brutalization, the terror tactics will not do. In order to save him time, they escorted the president quickly to the US for President Bush to go and tap him on the back at the press conference and say, you're a man of vision, a man of integrity, a man of so and so and so, etc., in order to buy him time. And before doing that, he had the impunity and the audacity to put an innocent, noble woman, and I'm not saying so because she's my wife. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for my wife. They put her on trial. Instead of, you're the corrupt ones, begin to take yourselves to trial. Begin to check your own corruption. In order to deviate attention from themselves, they rather put my innocent wife on the trial. Why did they do that? Because my wife could not take their harassment anymore, all the false accusations against her, so she finally decided to take them to court. As they began to realize they were going to lose, and the public was beginning to wake up to the foolish things they were doing, and the truth was now coming out against the government, they panicked. They quickly sort of partially withdrew and went and countercharged my wife with a criminal rubbish, a political. This is all that goes on. If you want to believe me, go and ask Kofi Annan whether he did not sit in my room next to me and express concern about the declining integrity of the judiciary in Ghana, and this is not safe for our stability. Go and ask him. So I'm saying that this man takes Kufuor over there and they go and tap it. I think this was most unethical for Bush to do that. Bush should have told him, Kufuor, this is getting out of hand. It's going too far, on the basis of the report that came from Porter Gross. Instead, you tap him to buy him time. You know, I'm sorry. Things like that. So it's not a question of just my word. I mean, today, come and do your own investigation. Ghana has become one of the #1 transit points for cocaine traveling, for cocaine transit. They sent the American immigration and the customs to come and coach our people, etc. When we were in office, this didn't happen, not even in Nigeria. Today, I mean, it's bad, but I guess this could be dealt with. But I think a government, you're the godfather of a people. A government must demonstrate goodwill. A government must provide a leadership of integrity to its people. And I'm telling you, and I repeat, that they perform miracles. Anyway, what's your next question?
In this part 8, he was asked at the time of the interview to give information about which European government were supporting the Ghanaian government at that time.
Il governo attuale in Ghana è stato supportato da quali governi europei?
Your favorite music.
Oh.
Coming to you live.
With Long John Silver's $10 C-shares, you can choose from fish, chicken, fried shrimp, or grilled shrimp, and get enough for your crew to share. Each for just $10. Long John Silver's Fish Yeah.
Oh, I think initially they were supported by most of them, by most of the Western governments. Because there's a way in which they used to see us as a socialist, etc. And do you know what they used to call us? The IMF, World Bank, America, Europe, they used to say that we are the wrong people doing the right things. because they perceived us as socialists. But nonetheless, I think they realized they couldn't knock us off, so they supported us, and we transformed our country beautifully. Today, they've been able to help the most criminal government, but somehow into office. It's almost as if to say that no matter how criminal you are, so long as you hoist the flag of of capitalism. Incidentally, the party that's in power right now, their symbol is the elephant, their colors are the Republican colors, etc., etc., etc. And no matter how criminal you are, so long as you say I'm capitalist, no matter how sinful you are, you end up being supported by some of the Western powers. Some of them are beginning to complain, but on the quiet. They're not doing it as openly as they were doing it when we were doing the right things. But let me reduce it to one little example. I will give credit to some of the Western powers who understood what was going on in my country and came to our support. Canada, Japan, Italy, and a number of others, as well as other third world countries, or so-called third world countries in Africa, as well as even some of our Muslim countries, Kuwait, and a few others, Saudi, who helped us, to build a second dam, etc., etc. However, the interest that I think you should know, or what I find a bit painful, is that we have always had a very healthy relationship with Italy in various facets of our industrial life. Sadelmi helped Dr. Kwame Nkrumah to build our first dam, a number of estates, etc. Quite frankly, I think you can get the statistics from your own governmental archives. However, being an Air Force pilot, I remember when I was a kid at school and I saw the displays going on because several countries came to display for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, our first president. And Italy won with the Macchi. So we've used the Macchi ever since 60-something when I was at school. By the time I joined the Air Force, we were still using the Italian fighters, the Macchis, Italian instructors. We had, the Italian Bell, one of the finest, the Augusta 109, and several others, from other countries, Britain and whatnot. But since these guys came in, they're doing everything possible, one, to destroy the Air Force, whether it's because I come from the Air Force. And as for Italian Air Force, go ask your people. Maybe the Chinese aircrafts may also be good. I don't know. But they're getting rid of, they're downgrading the Italian Air Force, all these things. They're bringing in some of the Russian aircraft, helicopters, bringing in some of the Chinese aircrafts, etc. If the reason is personal because Rawlings can fly all these things, I don't know. But the point is that I think Italian interest is on the decline as far as the Air Force is concerned. If there are other aspects of it, I don't know. Okay? But I think this is something you should come and do your own research. Get in touch with your own government as to whether it happened. I don't think this thing has anything to do with your former president Berlusconi or your current one. Let us hope your current one is aware of what's going on. Okay? But the point is that a lot of the Western governments, I think, were supportive of them in order to help promote so-called multi-party, Western multi-party, whatever it is. But I think they've woken up to the reality that it's not being handled properly. It's getting dangerous, because they're abusing. Yes, they are destroying the culture of democracy. They are destroying the quality of democracy. So how can they correct it? That's why we're saying that if they cannot contain them, then they will decline further. And so certainly, I think they're beginning to see that we're not too bad after all. So as they try to treat us like outcasts, now they realize that we are the ones who ensured the peace and stability in our country. Okay? We are the ones who made it possible to turn the economic this thing around in my country. We are the ones who made it possible for the country to bloom and became and earn the name that it did in Africa, in West Africa.
In this part 9, he was asked if it was true that he flew in the plane that was piloted by Stevie Wonders.
Sappiamo che una volta lei ha fatto volare Stevie Wonder. È una leggenda o è verità?
Yeah. Yes. People don't believe it. It was filmed by a French crew. And they wanted to publish it, but he refused when I met him in Los Angeles. But it did happen. I took some of them on a flight, and he was sitting on my right. So as soon as I took off, and I gave him the controls. So I was only controlling the power. And, in a plane, when you're in a car and you're going around a circle, you keep it that way so that it continues. But in a plane, when you want to turn right and you do this, you don't keep it there. If you keep it there, the plane will go round. So when you do this, you must check. This man, I didn't coach him, I didn't tell him anything. He put on the bank, as we took off, I gave him the controls, and he put on the bank, and then I said, that's good enough. He checked, without my telling him. So I asked him, you've flown before? He said, no. I kept quiet, we were flying. There were people on board. So I said, I don't believe you, you've flown before. He said, no. I see. But the beauty of it is that I have flown with people who can see. And even they had a problem. They're just swimming. This man's sensitivity was such that all I had to do was to guide him. Right a bit, left a bit, reduce it, pick it up a little. We flew, it was a 25-minute flight to Accra. I thought I would have to take over for the landing. But because he was doing so well, and we lined up on the runway so well, I guided him, and I was reducing the power, down a bit, up a bit, down, hold it there, up a bit, hold it there. So I put off the power, and we landed. Everybody was clapping in the plane, and the French crew apparently covered it throughout. I mean, for me, I was really enthused, okay? And when we met in Los Angeles many years later, so I was telling everybody what happened. And he made a joke of it and said, no, no. I told him, apparently the French crew wanted to publish it. But he said no. So I asked him why in front of everybody in Los Angeles. He said, no, 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 no. People will think he's not blind. He made a joke of it, you know. But apparently, you know, he's written a book where he admits that it did happen. So I'm hoping that the French crew will probably get to him and publish it. It was very impressive. It was very impressive, his sensitivity.
In this last part, which is the part 10, he was asked if he were going to stand for election in 2008.
Nel 2008 ci saranno nuove elezioni in Ghana. Intende ricandidarsi?
No, I've said my 2 terms, and I'm quite a tired man. I think I'm helping my party, but I have finally taken the advice of my colleagues to set up an NGO, what you call it, a foundation, you know. And I'm looking around for some really good people, because we need to take the word around that, you know, democracy can only take.
You're not Julius Caesar, okay?
No, I'm not.
Take root if we show the appropriate respect to the people, put confidence in our people, and not only that, but the most important thing is to empower the people, not take their power. Too often, in some parts of the world, we remove the power of the people into ourselves. I want to repeat it. I've said it and I'm saying it again. We must learn to empower people. The point is that NEPAD is a new principle in African Union. It says ownership of the political situation, accountability and transparency. We survived as long as we did on education, respect, accountability, transparency, and love. In other words, we did not leave our people out of anything. And you know something? The important thing is that when you take education seriously, conscientization, and you share information, you don't mystify, you demystify, you share information with your people. When you go wrong, they will never blame you because they were part of it. But when you disempower them and you have to dictate to them all the time, what, this, etc., etc., when you go wrong, they blame you all the time. You understand what I'm saying? And yet, if democracy has any value, besides, we're going through trying times. There is no reason to leave out your people. Because our people, whether they're Africans, Alaskans, Italians, Americans, there is very little difference between us. Fundamental difference is very small. They just have to have an understanding. My citizens cannot speak Italian. If you want to communicate with my people in Italian, you might think you're stupid. Chief, if you could speak the language of my people who have not even been to school and try to listen to their wisdom, you'll be impressed. But you see, you've got to understand the complication, the extent to which the English colonial language has been used to intimidate our people, so that their native wisdom through their own language, the best of them cannot come out. Because the English language is the language by which you're used to judge whether you're intelligent or not. You get me? I need time with you. We need time. We need to continue.
Sicuramente molti ghanesi che hanno espatriato la stanno guardando. Intende dire loro qualcosa?
I've met a few personally at the airport. I've met 1 or 2 in 1 or 2 factories here. And they behaved in a very positive way towards me. And they were expressing regret about what is going on back at home. So the only advice is like, how can we get back our country is their question. And the only advice I can really give them is, how can you organize yourselves here? Organize yourselves here to be able to assist your constituencies back at home. Yes, whether it's through the party machinery, through other associations, whatever it is, things you're learning here, if you're making little earnings, how can you assist? Through contributions, the clinic, etc., and deny your people. If you have the privilege of being here and you're earning a little more, please don't forget your people, okay? But, much as I would like to speak partisan politics over here, I don't particularly encourage it, even though I know they've grown disillusioned with the current party in office. So it's like they're looking for what can they do to assist our party back at home. I can only really tell them as candidly as I can, get yourselves into a very solid association, form your own, choose your own leaders, and decide on what you want to do to assist the situation back at home. Even if you do belong to the opposition party, how can you use your influence to make sure that that bad man in your party, is brought under control or thrown out? So that we will have, even if we end up with multi-party, to whatever it is, they'll be constructive. There must be a trade of logic against counter-logic.
Are you still troubled by how to hang a picture on the wall? Now, our new tool comes here, Sacred Picture Hanging Toolkit. I need to press the hook, find the location, and hang.
Logic against counter-logic, not logic against illogic. That's rubbish.
Thank you for taking the time to watch the entire interview from such a powerful and a wonderful, great leader with great leadership skills.
Program 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.